Caregivers of people with Alzheimer's disease. Presenters are Jaira Chambers, Michael Hall, Colton Harris, Niambi Ibam, Danelle McFadden, and William Strickland. In the US, 15.7 million caregivers provide care for a family member with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia. 48% of caregivers are between the ages of 18 and 49 years old. Two-thirds of caregivers are white, 10% are Black, 8% are Hispanic, and 5% are Asian American. The remaining 10% represent a variety of other racial and ethnic groups. Approximately two-thirds of dementia caregivers are women. Now we're going to discuss the population. 60% of caregivers are living with the person with dementia. As the disease progresses, the individuals with Alzheimer's are more likely to wander or elope. Most times, the physical environment does not support safety or engagement of the basic ADLs for the individual with Alzheimer's disease. If the caregiver doesn't have access to the proper home modifications, more times it is required to maintain the safety of the individual. Therefore, the caregiver has added stress and less time to engage in meaningful occupations. As for limitations to access, it can be very expensive to take full responsibility of another individual. And according to the Alzheimer's Association, 41% of caregivers have a household income of only 50,000 or less per year, as in 2022. Out of those 15 million caregivers, nearly 11 million of them provide unpaid care. And as far as disparities, they have a major impact on caregivers of individuals with Alzheimer's. Approximately one quarter of dementia caregivers are sandwich generation caregivers, meaning that they are not only for an aging parent, but they're also for at least one child. Approximately 40% of dementia caregivers have a college degree or more education. Think about the other 60% who don't. Now we're going to discuss further the population with Jaira.
Modifiable risk. The modifiable risk for caregivers of individuals with Alzheimer's disease includes general health and mental health. General health is considered a risk due to physiological changes that stem from physical demand required from the caregiver. This includes helping the patient with basic ADLs such as transfers, bathing, and dressing. Mental health is affected by the lack of social engagement and the amount of responsibility expected from the caregiver. The prevalence of depression is higher among dementia caregivers, which is 30 to 40% than other caregivers. The previous mentioned modifiable risks have a significant impact on occupational performance. Impact on occupational performance. Caregivers burnout leads to a decrease in occupational performance in the following areas: health management, social participation, home management, and job performance. For health management, caregivers put their loved ones' needs before their own. This results in the lack of care for oneself. Chronic conditions are at a higher percent compared to those who are caregivers for individuals who do not have dementia or non-caregivers. Chronic conditions include heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, and obesity. Social participation. Isolation occurs due to the constant need to care for the individual with Alzheimer's. To ensure safety and efficient care, it is easier to care for the individual at home rather than bringing him or her in public places. Home management. Time dedicated to the loved ones decreases the amount of time to tend to home management tasks such as cleaning, doing laundry, or organizing. And job performance. According to the Alzheimer's Association, caregivers were required to decrease work hours permanently or have had excessive call outs or tardies compared to individuals who were not caregivers. In 2018, National Health and Wellness surveys, close to 13% of dementia caregivers in the United States indicated absence from work. This proves that job performance is not only affected by the lack of work participation due to the role of caregiving, but also personal health issues. And now we're going to discuss the aspect of wellness.
And in the aspects of wellness, some things that the caregiver may face is mobility. Mobility can be deteriorating gait from the client or the patient. So, and aspects of So, for example, I worked in a nursing home, and I've seen patients with Alzheimer's before. You know, their gait starts to deteriorate, so you may have to show the caregiver different ways of transfers. Maybe an easy stand, maybe or they call it an easy lift. Any of those things that, or an RJO, basically those are mechanical lifts that help lift the patient up and get them from point A to point B, either through bedside commodes or even into the wheelchair. And then some safety awareness that they may have to face is even with the client cooking. So that caregiver may have to worry about them cooking, like maybe wake up in the middle of the night and they try to leave the oven on, or even in the morning they're trying to cook up some grits or some breakfast and everything, may leave the burner on. And even when it comes to driving, you know, I've heard of cases where the patient forgot where they were and they decided that they try to go out and driving. So what we're hoping to do is maybe educate the caregiver on maybe disconnecting the battery so that the car won't be able to start, or you know, maybe you have a place where to put the keys at in a different location, so it keeps that client or patient from getting in there. Some self care issues is like dressing. Dressing a person with Alzheimer's can be very demanding on the body. Um, they may have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get them up, to get their pants on, or even bathing if they don't have the right tools like a bedside commode or a transfer tub bench to get them in and out of the bathroom or tub or shower. So those are some other things, and then lastly is toileting. Toileting is a huge thing. So I know a lot of caregivers that were having issues with being able to hold their client up while cleaning them, because sometimes is they kind of forget or they lose the processing ability to clean themselves, so they have to worry about cleaning. So that's just extra weight that the caregiver may have to worry about. So in our program, we're going to be trying to teach them that, but we'll talk about that a little bit further on. But right now, we're talking about possible solutions. So I'll give it off to you.
Thank you, Michael. In general, the goal of intervention is to improve the health and well-being of dementia caregivers by relieving the negative aspects of caregiving. We want to educate the caregivers of general signs and symptoms of general conditions experienced by caregivers um, by providing prevention methods. We want to train caregivers on how to complete a simple health assessment, as for example, environmental modifications, establish a health care routine such as medication. We want to educate them on verbal cueing the person that has Alzheimer's, and to give the person with Alzheimer's positive reinforcements to promote independence. And of course, we want to simplify the task so that the person with Alzheimer's can do more for themselves to alleviate burnout from the caregiver. Thank you.
Thank you, Niambi, for that. So some of the programs that we felt relevant to what we're trying to do here, of course, there were very many, but just to dial it back and stick to just a few that kind of coincided with ours was the National Institute on Aging Information Center. They offered information on diagnosis, treatment, patient care, caregivers' needs, long-term care, and research related to Alzheimer's disease. The program is one of the 27 institutes and centers of National Institute of Healthcare, of Health, which means that it receives federal funding and additional funding from taxpayers. As occupational therapists, we would be able to use the diagnosis and treatment information to create a health plan for our clients, ensuring they receive the best care. So basically, just taking the information that we receive from them and using it for us to advance and create a much better life for our clients. Also, there was a healthcare locator, which allows the caregivers the opportunity to get more information about the community resources such as home care, adult daycare, and nursing homes. This program is also funded by federal government as well. So with the elder care locator, we wanted to relieve some of the stress or look at programs that relieve some of the stress from the caregivers because, again, like my colleague Niambi said, that there is a burnout at some point with taking care of their loved ones, and we want to make sure they receive the services that they need. And another program that coincided with ours as well was the Alzheimer's Association, which offers information and help live for individuals with Alzheimer's and to caregivers. There are local chapters across the country that offer help and support as well, which means that this isn't just one isolated location, that you can go to a variety of different areas to receive the help if it's not an area where you are located at. And I will pass it over to my other colleague, William. Thank
All
you.
right. On to logical program development. Our team will be offering a program titled Giving Back to Caregivers, with our main focus being on helping these caregivers improve their lives and occupational engagement, which will in turn help the patients or clients in which they treat. Uh, Caregivers in the local area will have 2 1-hour sessions offered to them of coverage per week, where our team goes in and covers their duties for those 2 1-hour sessions. The remainder of the team members that we have will offer occupational engagement programs that offer interests of local caregivers, which we will develop from a survey that we gather prior to program development or program implementation. Caregivers will not be required to sign up for these sessions, but we'll offer them, and it'll just give them more options. Some people don't like groups, some people just want to do their own thing, and they should be allowed to do so. We don't want to take away from that. Offered sessions will be either group or individual based on preference, and then social approach to occupational engagements that encourages human interaction. Our group will address the context of the caregivers' lives by considering their needs or wants for social interaction outside of their daily care environment. Their behavioral needs or wants in reference to always being responsible for someone else's care can be very mentally and emotionally taxing, and so we're trying to just give them a break from that and giving them emotional and mental balance back into something they want to do, aiming at the occupational justice that they may be lacking. All therapy sessions will include proper use of PPE to assist in mitigation of risks involved with vulnerable populations that caregivers may be assisting with. Therapy sessions could and may include education classes, exercise classes, book clubs, and other occupations that caregivers may be interested in. Those are just some examples that we thought of. This therapy will assist the caregivers in alleviating, again, emotional and mental strain that is involved in respite care. And one other facet of our logical program development that we thought of was partnering with local police department to provide a tracking device to the caregiver that they could use for their if they have patients of Alzheimer's and dementia. That way, in case they get lost or eloped, it'll give them one another tool to like obtain a location of that person. And now we'll move on to the overview of our program, which will be completed by my colleague, OTS Jira Chambers.
Thank you, Will. Okay, so for the overview of the program, the goals are to increase health awareness, occupational performance, and optimize the care for Alzheimer's caregiver population. The model that best fit for our specific population is the precede proceed model. This model is appropriate because it utilizes a theoretical and application approach that is ideal for community-based health programs. This model includes 9 phases, and the use of phases 1 through 3 help formulate our intervention and session plans. So Danelle's going to give a brief synopsis about those 3 phases.
So, phase one, we're going to talk about social diagnosis. This phase identifies the problem. We concluded that the quality of life is affected, lack of occupational performance and health management, social participation, home management, and job performance due to continuous requirement to care for the individual with dementia. Phase two, epidemiological assessment. This pertains to health. Physio- Physiological risk factors increase, which are likely to contribute to the prevalence of chronic health conditions. Phase three is behavioral and environmental diagnosis. So, behavioral includes self care utilization, preventative action, and consumption patterns. Environment is impacted by economic and service availability. The environment is also contribute to decreased occupational performance affected by the lack of availability to help with caregiving, with caring for the individual with dementia within a household that may not accommodate the individual with that dementia due to easy access to exit and entry points, uneven surfaces, or access to household items like knives, scissors that may now be deemed as unsafe to the individual's inability to use those appropriately. So, for our marketing approach, we will include social media, providing informational brochures to day programs, nursing homes, and other relevant programs to recommend our services to those who may be in need. Our program will be centrally located in Jacksonville, Florida, and we will serve those within a 50-mile radius of the zip code 32216. We will continue discussing the intervention target, objectives, and approaches, which include phases 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9 of the proceed precede model.
All right, on to the intervention target, objectives, and approaches. Our intervention target, the target of this intervention is to increase health awareness, improve occupational performance, and optimize the care for the Alzheimer's caregiver population by assisting the caregivers in gaining occupational justice in their chosen areas of occupation. Improving the lives of caregivers will directly and exponentially improve the quality of care that they give to their Alzheimer's patients. The intervention objectives. The objectives that should be met to provide the best chance of intervention success are to establish a candid and understanding of the needs and wants of the caregiver, provide the caregiver with resources that aid in achieving occupational engagement, to offer the caregiver training that will ease any unseen burden of patient care, to offer on location devices that ease the worry of loss of loved adults, to ease mental strain placed upon caregivers that results from prolonged singular responsibility of care, to improve the care provided by caregivers, and lastly, to improve the overall lives of caregivers. Intervention approaches. This intervention plan will include multiple different approaches to intervention. Throughout its entirety of implementation. First, the intervention plan will aid in creating and promoting occupational engagement for caregivers by offering them resources and time to engage in occupations which they choose, resulting in improving their overall health. Next, the intervention plan will help to maintain this new level of occupational engagement by establishing a weekly routine for caregivers to engage in their chosen occupations. Lastly, this intervention plan will prevent the social isolation of the caregiver by giving them time to engage in occupations outside of their home environment if they choose to do so. Each of these approaches ensures that the objectives of this intervention plan are met in some way, making success of the intervention almost foolproof. And now we're going to move forward to the program implementation, which will be covered by my colleague Michael Hall.
And you're probably asking yourself, what does this look like? Well, this looks like kind of like a home health, kind of a community-based program, where our plan is to do a frequency of maybe twice a week for 1 hour sessions. The intensity of the program maybe will last from 12 weeks to, like I said, 2 hours a week. It could be at the home, it could be at a public place. For example, in my community in Brunswick, Georgia, we have this place called SOAR. SOAR is like adults with autism, and it gives a little bit of a break. It gives like an hour to 2 hour window where that caregiver can drop, their loved one there and everything, and just take a moment to just take a deep breath. And then while we're in there in this like community base, these people get to socialize. They get to be with someone that kind of relates with them. And then also we have like activities that were fun for them to do. We did chair yoga. We did a lot of finger painting. We did also even talked about meal plans. We were able to get people to try new food they never had in their entire life. And so hopefully we can provide something similar to that for clients that have autism or Alzheimer's. And so that's the inclusion criteria, is having all stages of Alzheimer's are welcome. There's no exclusions. What we ask for is consent. Consent will be obtained from the caregiver and then from the client's participation. Disclosures of medicine. Clients must provide a list of medication for the therapist to have on file for educational and emergency purposes. So let's say if a person was taking like blood pressure medicine and then they start feeling lightheaded. Well, if we know that, we can kind of have an indication like, okay, let's just take their vitals really quick to see if their blood pressure is dropping when it goes to standing. Vital information like that can make a change. And also we can educate the caregivers on that as well by knowing the different medications that they're on. And then agreement for sobriety. Our program strongly suggests sobriety to achieve optimal performance. Therapists could release a client if we notice that there is an effect in treatment and safety. But then I now want to pass it on to the sessions plan.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, so what a session plan will look like in our intervention is actually we we're going to give each client a questionnaire prior to the session, and we're going to have them describe some of the issues that they have to gain an understanding of their home layout before the session plan. Um, so I just want to give you a couple examples of what a session plan will look like with us. For example, session one for the caregivers, we're going to give you about 15 minutes of education on like home modification and training. Um, we're going to educate the caregivers on the use of location devices for individuals with Alzheimer's. And then 45 minutes, we're going to engage in leisure activity with the caregiver and have an option of including the Alzheimer's patient in the activity. Session two might include 15 minutes of addressing a different ADL in which the caregiver struggles with. We'll provide them with training and education on how to address that ADL. And then we're going to do about 30 minutes of meditation session or yoga, or we're going to work on coping techniques to improve mental health with the caregiver. And then lastly, about 15 minutes, we're going to identify an activity that the caregiver and the individual with Alzheimer's both enjoy and create a plan to improve occupational engagement while decreasing occupational deprivation in both of them. And here are some of the references that we use in the slide in the presentation.